So before we start, we want to welcome everyone. So please kindly write in the comments, in the chat comments here in the chat, what do you do, which company or type of business you work in, what's your job, your company nature, and country you're from. So for example, I would write, I am Shireen, I work in procurement in a company, manufacturing company, and I am from Egypt. Okay, just tell us information about you. It helps us in the session. Okay, so let's see what we have.
All right, then. All right, well, while everybody is writing in the chat, let's go ahead and get started. So sorry for the technical difficulties this morning, but I'm really excited to be here. I'm Nisha Shah. I was here almost exactly a year ago to introduce the supply chain maturity assessment. So it's great to be back here. I'll talk a little bit about the assessment itself, and then I'll also give a bit of an update in terms of the number of companies that we've assessed over the last year. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
So, okay, definitely fantastic. Let's have just a glimpse on the people. We have Grant Swanepoel from Association of Supply Chain Management, previously known as APEX, in South Africa. Hi, Grant. We have Tarek from Egypt. He's working as regional sales representative for BSK Global. Hi, Tarek. So only two have wrote for us. Okay, we have so many people. So we would like first to welcome you, Nisha. Please introduce yourself, what you do, how you have been doing this, because I know you since a while, but we want everyone to get to know you too. So please introduce yourself.
Sure. Nisha Shah. So I am a solution architect at ASCM. So basically, I help different organizations with their supply chain transformation efforts using the SCOR model. Prior to joining ASCM, I spent quite a while at Boeing doing various roles in engineering, operations, and supply chain. And I'm the primary architect for the supply chain maturity assessment that we're going to be talking about today.
Thank you, Nisha. And I would like to say that Nisha has been behind this fantastic effort. How many years now? 3 years?
2 years at ASCM and 1 year since we started this assessment.
Okay, so we have the source of all the knowledge. So please.
All right. Well, I don't know about all the knowledge. I have a little bit of knowledge, though. Let's get started there. So first off, thanks everyone for joining. So today, what I'd like to do is, for some of you who are familiar with the maturity assessment, this will be a bit of an update. For those that are not, I'd like to introduce our assessment, and I'd like to also share that this assessment is based on SCOR. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the linkage between the SCOR framework for supply chain and the maturity assessment. And then we can talk a little bit about how you can get started with this assessment and utilize it in your own organizations. So feel free to go ahead and put any questions that you have in the chat. If somebody can help me with monitoring the chat, feel free to interrupt me with any questions you have. So first off, I wanted to start with this idea of process maturity, because really when we talk about our assessment, that's what we're measuring in a qualitative manner. It's process maturity. And really, why should we care? Why should we care about process maturity? If I look at the top 10 trends in supply chain, so this is from 2024, the ASCM list. If you look at the top 10 trends, the first 5 trends you could broadly put in the digital transformation category. So you have digital supply chain, big data and analytics, artificial intelligence, systems and people, visibility. So that's great. So why do I care about processes? So I think the thing that is important to remember here is while digital transformation is at the forefront, and this is kind of the big goal that a lot of organizations have, in order to achieve digital transformation, you can't do it on the back of broken processes, right? So in order to really get the benefits of digital transformation, you also need to optimize your processes. So what I've included here is a couple of quotes from some former CEOs at SAP, IBM, but the general idea here is exactly that, that digital transformation requires process transformation, and process transformation requires a framework. So lucky for us, we have a framework in supply chain. That framework is the SCOR model. So I know many of you here may be familiar with SCOR. If you are not familiar with SCOR, I highly, highly recommend that you take a look at the framework. It does include the 4 pieces of performance metrics, processes, practices, and skills for supply chain. So it is free, open access, available to anyone. Go to score.ascm.org. There's a QR code. This QR code takes you to the ASCM website where we talk about the SCOR model. Lots of resources available there on the model itself. So really recommend that you spend some time getting familiar with SCOR. It is the framework that this maturity assessment is built on. And if you look at the 4 pieces of SCOR, the maturity assessment is really focused on the process side of SCOR. It is a qualitative assessment of the processes that are in the SCOR model. So what are those processes? So when we are talking about the processes, and specifically from a maturity assessment standpoint, we're looking at what we call level 2 of the SCOR model. So these are the processes in level 2 of the SCOR model. I should say that there is a deeper level of processes in the model itself. It goes down to a 3rd level, so it goes into even more detail than what is shown on the screen. But for the sake of simplicity and in order for us to understand what's in the assessment, this is kind of the level that we are talking about. So you can see the major.
Can you give people just a quick overview on SCOR, because not all of them know about it?
Yes. So from a process standpoint, there are 7 major processes that are in the SCOR model. So you can see those processes listed on the leaves of this flower petal, if you will. So plan, source, order, transform, fulfill, return, and in the center you see orchestrate. So this is the orchestration of all of the processes in your supply chain. So from a process perspective, what the SCOR model allows you to do is it allows you to look at the processes that exist within your organization and map them to a standard framework. So what's nice is if you're starting somewhere, you can say, what are all the processes that should be, or one should consider to be in a supply chain? And SCOR kind of gives you that list. And from there, you can start to look at your own processes and ask some really deep questions around those processes. So does this process make sense? Do I do this process in a consistent manner? What are the best practices around this process, etc.? So what's nice about SCOR, I should say, is yes, there are these 4 areas that SCOR looks at: the metrics, the processes, the practices, and the skills. What's really great about the framework is that it allows you to also cross-reference these different areas. So what I mean by that is if I am interested in a certain metric, so if I am interested in a perfect order fulfillment metric, I can look at the model, and then I can also see what processes in my supply chain help contribute to that metric, or what best practices I need in my supply chain to contribute to that metric, or what skills my people need. Similarly, you can start with a process and get that same information in terms of metrics, practices, and people. So all of the pieces in the model are cross-referenced to one another. So it's a very powerful model for nearly everything you do in supply chain. So highly recommend that you take a look at it. The other thing I should mention about SCOR is if you go to score.ascm.org, there is a free 3-hour training session on the model itself. You can take that to really familiarize yourself with the framework. So the assessment is based on the SCOR model. It's specifically based on the process side of SCOR. And really what this assessment is meant to do is it's meant to be a high-level qualitative view of the supply chain and giving you a vector of what are those areas that I should focus on that are potentially the weakest links in my supply chain. So it's a self-assessment, and essentially the way it works is it is an online Qualtrics survey link that your organization would receive. There's a set of demographics questions that ask about some of the specifics of the supply chain in your organization, general information about the organization like revenue type, revenue, number of employees, things like that. And then after that set of demographics questions, there's a set of questions on each of 27 focus areas. So these focus areas map back to the SCOR processes. And in the next slide, I'll show you what those are. But really, it's things like S&OP, risk management, supplier relationship management, things like that. And for each of those, you'll be provided a set of options that best describes your supply chain. So the idea is that it's a self-assessment. You're answering these questions based on the maturity of your supply chain, and you're given some pretty discrete response options, so you can easily find yourself in the question. We are saying that it takes about 2 hours to complete the assessment, and it is 2 hours if it's basically one person or a small group of people completing this assessment. Now, we have run this assessment in a variety of forums. Sometimes organizations have chosen to do this in a facilitated manner. So Shireen, for example, could come to your organization, bring the leadership team together from supply chain and do a facilitated assessment. Something like that would be very valuable, but it may take a little bit longer. So it may take 3 or 4 hours. But the real value in that is that you get a really good idea of some of the strengths and weaknesses from a process standpoint within the end-to-end supply chain. Once the survey is completed, once the organization has filled out the survey, it is sent back to ASCM automatically, and we prepare an output briefing for your organization. And that output briefing would be scheduled about 2 weeks out from when we receive the assessment results. And then that output briefing would basically provide you a view of your supply chain maturity across the 7 process areas. So what is my maturity in terms of plan, in terms of source, in terms of orchestrate, et cetera. You would also get a view of the maturity of individual focus areas as well as next steps. So if, for example, I am a level 2 in sales and operations planning, what are some of the things that I would need to do to get to a level 3 in sales and operations planning? That's kind of the level of detail that output briefing would provide. And I'll give you some examples of some of the charts in the output briefing as well. The maturity levels are levels 1 through 5. So if you are familiar with some of the certifications, CTSC, CSCP, that we have at ASCM, it follows kind of the same level 1 through 5 model. the definitions of what is included in level 1 through 5 is really based on those 4 Ps in the SCOR model. So across the board throughout this assessment, the various response options will include details around process, around best practice, around skills, and around metrics. So for example, a reactive supply chain might not be capturing many metrics. It might not have a continuous improvement process, or it may not have defined processes. There might not be a skill management plan. Those would all be kind of around level 1, 2. Something that's at a level 5, you would have some very robust process management, process governance. You would have robust metrics in place that are continuously monitored, etc. So those are the types of things we're looking at in each level from a maturity standpoint. So here are the specific areas that we cover in this maturity assessment. So you can see in parentheses, there is a reference back to the SCOR model. So P1, for example, is the plan supply chain process. So the nomenclature is there so that you can easily map this back to the SCOR framework. One thing to note is the assessment is very heavy on the orchestrate side of the house. So certainly we found many organizations, especially organizations with more advanced supply chains, do very well in the fundamentals of plan, order, source, transform, fulfill, return. Where there are sometimes more breakdowns is in the orchestrate side of the house. How do we get the different functional organizations within my company as well as outside my company working together? How do we do things like business rule development, supply chain strategy, segmentation, things like that? So that is also a key part of this assessment. The maturity levels here, and I mentioned this, and I know there's a lot of words on this slide, but we wanted to provide a view of what's captured at each level. The basic thing to remember here is that the levels basically correlate to maturity from a process, a metric, a best practices, and a skill management perspective. So the more mature you are in all 4 of those areas, the higher your score will generally be. This is an example of a question, and all of the questions in this maturity assessment basically follow this pattern, this template. It's which of the following best describes, and then the name of the process in your supply chain. So in this example, this is which of the following best describes the S&OP process in your supply chain. So here now you have 5 different options, and the idea is this is a self-assessment. You know your end-to-end supply chain, your S&OP process, and we're asking you to then identify which of these levels best correlates to what you see in your organization. So as you can imagine, really important in taking this assessment is making sure that it is the people that really know the processes and how they are executed in your organization that are taking the assessment, since it is a self-assessment. So that becomes really important. And all of the questions in the assessment basically follow this format. You'll be given the process, and then you'll be given some very specific options for levels 1 through 5. And this is an example of the output. So in the output briefing, these are the types of things that you would receive. So first off, I'm starting with the upper left, you would get this general view of where your maturity lands for all 7 of the major process areas. So for example, here you can see you're primarily a level 2 in plan, level 3 order, etc. So this gives you a general view of where your maturity is for each of the process areas. You'll also get this bar chart view, which shows specifically which focus areas were least mature and which were most mature. So orchestrate is a great example of this. You might have generally an average of a 2 in orchestrate. However, there are 13 different categories within orchestrate. Some of them you may be very good at, like regulatory and compliance, and some of them you may need quite a bit of improvement, like in supply chain strategy, for example. So you would get that more detailed view, the detailed view around the levels for each of those, so you can see what fell into each bucket of levels, and then the view of next steps. So this is going to be a slide per process area. So you can see within plan, there were 3 focus areas. How was my maturity for each of these focus areas? What does that maturity description look like? And then what are the things that I should consider in order to get to the next level of maturity? So if I'm at a 3, what do I need to do to get to a 4? So these are all the pieces that would be provided into the output briefing. So I wanted to pause for a minute. I certainly have a few more things I would like to go over, but I wanted to pause and see if there were any questions thus far, either about SCOR or about the maturity assessment. All right, don't be shy.
So I think, yeah, if anyone has question, please write it here, because we know this might be so much knowledge for most of you. But as Nisha mentioned, everything based on supply chain operation reference, SCOR, and we will put you the link of a SCOR and share with you the presentation, of course. And SCOR is free, accessible standards. And what the world has been looking for over the years, how to assess my supply chain maturity. So let me ask you a question. Do we do it a company level or a supply chain level, Nisha? Please.
Yeah, great question. So this is done at a supply chain level. So understanding that one company may have multiple supply chains that look very different. So kind of classic example, a company that, for example, a company like a Boeing would have a supply chain that focuses on their production airplane, but they also have a supply chain that focuses on spare parts. Very, very different supply chains. So this would be done 2 different times, one for the production aircraft, one for the spare parts, because we don't want to mix together 2 things that don't go together.
So when you talk here, Nisha, means exactly that building a plane could be make to order supply chain or engineer to order supply chain. Totally
Yes.
different from spare parts, maintenance, repair, and overhaul. It's a make to stock supply chain. Okay.
Absolutely.
So what she is explaining, and this is part of the SCOR model, supply chain operation reference, as she showed us. The core of it is orchestrate, and one of the important points in orchestrate is supply chain segmentation. That in every organization we have different supply chain segments, and this should be done by supply chain, not for overall organization. So someone is asking you, Nisha, can we have the assessment surveys?
So basically, if you are interested in doing the assessment, there is a QR code at the end of this presentation. You can fill that out, and we will reach out to you and we can set up the assessment for you itself, and you can take it for your organization.
Exactly. And we always support it. We do it, always coach and manage it, because We need to ensure that people have the right answers. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So please go on.
Okay. All right, so I mentioned that we are 1 year into this assessment. So where are we now? So after 1 year, we have about 35 companies that have completed the assessment. We currently have 15 that are underway. So if you look at the companies that have completed and what's underway, it's about 50 companies. Really interesting population of companies, lots of variation in terms of geographic region. So quite a few companies in the Middle East, also companies in India, in Europe, in North America, in the US, in Mexico, and Canada as well. So quite a bit of geographic variation there. Also interesting is from a revenue standpoint. I know, one of the questions that I was once asked, is this more for a big corporation or is this for a startup? And what we're finding is that it really runs the gamut. Some people are taking this assessment that are more in startup mode and they're trying to figure out what they need to implement in their supply chain. And, to Shireen's earlier point, SCORE as a framework is great for that as well, because it gives you all the building blocks of supply chain. So we do see for this assessment some smaller companies, but we also see large multinationals taking this as well. So quite a bit of variation from a revenue standpoint. And then from an industry sector standpoint, I would say right now, the companies that we have in our database, they lean more towards the industrial manufacturing sector. However, we do have quite a few technology companies, a few biotechs, etc. So still early days in this assessment, but we've seen quite a few companies already see significant value in doing something like this. One of the nice things is from a time investment perspective, this is fairly small, right? I mean, to go through the self-assessment, to have this discussion, it's not a huge time investment, but what you get in return is a pretty good indication of where some of the needs lie within the organization and where we can dig deeper, those areas that we need to really focus on in order to enable your transformation efforts. And then, of course, the best thing is it all is tied to a framework. Was there a question? No. Okay. So I will say one of the things that we do want to be able to do is eventually to provide a benchmark. In order to do that, we do need a larger number of companies in the database. So just want to let everyone know that that is coming. But the more companies we can have, the better the benchmark would be. So I highly recommend that you take the assessment for your organization, add to the body of knowledge, and also get a good understanding from a SCORE perspective where you might want to focus on.
Excellent. And it's totally for free, right?
Absolutely. Free.
Okay. Fantastic. No limitation on organization size or industry. Okay.
Not at all. And so this is the QR code here. So if you're ready to take the assessment or if you're interested in learning more about the assessment, please go to this QR code. It goes to a form, fill out the form, and Shireen will get back to you. We'll go through some questions, answer any questions you have, and we can get you set up to take the assessment.
Excellent. So everyone, you have the QR code. If you are interested to run it for your organization, please fill it in. Our team will contact you, and we will look at the opportunities.
All
So we
right,
will put
excellent.
the link as well in the we will put the link as well in the chat. So for you, Nisha, all the analysis comes through you, right?
Through ASCM, yes.
So what are the top problems you're facing?
Great question. Yeah. So I would say if you were to look across, the biggest areas of need kind of consistently tend to be in plan and orchestrate. Certainly in planning, typically we see companies need help around S&OP. That tends to score lower. In the orchestrate section, depending on the maturity of the organization, a lot of times some of the sustainability pieces tend to score lower, like circular economy, like ESG. Supply chain segmentation also tends to be a lower scoring item. So those are the areas that I would say we generally see companies struggle with across the board.
And especially orchestrates everything that enables and makes the supply chain run, and it's not under the supply chain department, right?
Exactly. That's one of the big challenges. And that's also one of the challenges when you take this assessment, the perspective that we need to make sure we have, especially around orchestrate, is really kind of a broader organizational view, not just my little piece of planning or my little piece of ordering.
And this is one of the best things I like about this assessment, because we have been doing lots of assessments. Everything was focused on supply chain internal issues. But in this assessment, you have a question about supply chain risk, about strategy, about business rules, about data and information, and there is a maturity level from 1 to 5 in each question, right?
Absolutely.
I
And
honestly have run this survey, just if you allow me to add, I have run this
yes.
assessment for 3 of my clients, and it was very fruitful because it was eye-opener for everyone in the organization to see the big picture, and everyone can relate it to their supply chain problems. So please go on.
Yes, no, absolutely. I was saying that we have found that the organizations that have taken this assessment have definitely found it helpful, and it is a great way to kind of start a transformation journey, right? From here, you might be able to zero in on where you want to focus your future efforts. So that is a way that we've seen this used in the past.
And I think this is the latest assessment tool for ASM, and we have so many other tools. Would you like to just to give an idea about the assessment tools?
Yeah. So this is kind of the broadest assessment. It's the supply chain maturity assessment. We also have a couple of additional free assessments that we offer in the areas of sustainability specifically. So we have a sustainability assessment as well as a talent assessment. So that is really focused on the skills within an organization and understanding where skill gaps lie within an organization. And certainly these different assessment tools can be used together as well. So you could do a maturity assessment. You could see that planning is an area of weakness in the organization. Well, perhaps it makes sense to also do a talent assessment to see if part of the issue is in terms of skill gaps and where specifically you would need to address those gaps. So definitely assessments can work together. I should also mention, since this is kind of the qualitative view of SCOR, SCOR also has an assessment that is much more quantitative. So if you are interested more on the metrics side of SCOR as opposed to processes, there is also an assessment that focuses on the SCOR metrics. That's called SCOR Mark. And that's actually a benchmark that you are able to do, comparing your company's metrics to those of other companies. So that's also a possibility. So yes, Shireen, to your point, there are a number of assessments. We like to start with this one because it is the most general and broadly applicable one. And from there, if it makes sense, there are certainly others that are available.
Okay, amazing. So now we open the floor for people if you want to, if you have any questions. Okay. So what is the time at your place now, Nisha? Is it 6 a.m.?
It's 6:41 a.m., yes.
Yeah. Oh, we apologize for that. Okay.
Oh, not too bad. A good start to a Saturday.
Okay.
All right.
So I think we don't have so many questions so far, but definitely people have the QR code. They can access it, and we would love to have more results, more sharing about it. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, Nisha. Thank you, Nisha, and thank you, everyone who have joined us today. And thank you, Nisha, really for making it that simple. It's a very complex topic, and there are even many, I think, dissertations and PhD studies about it. How you can assess your supply chain maturity. So it was 1 year ago, and this year again we have you. We're so happy, and we would like to give you this appreciation certificate. Okay.
Thank you so
We have
much,
so many
Shireen.
people. Yeah, people write you thank you, many thanks, thank you, thanks. You have so many thank you on the line. Okay.
Thank you. No, it was my honor to present here.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. So everyone is writing to you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us. Okay. Have a good
Thank you.
day. You and okay.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.